I think the main thing is you accept people where they're at the time. To assume that somebody who's living with a dementia diagnosis doesn't have dementia or is not basically meeting the norms is about you not getting to know them. It's your problem, not theirs.
G'day, Gwenda.
G'day, Hamish.
How are you?
All the better for seeing you.
Who have you got here with you?
That's Miss Redley. Miss Redley's my assistant's dog.
Yeah, okay.
She accompanies me everywhere.
And she's a...
Spoodle, golden cocker spaniel, red poodle.
with a sparkly pink collar. Matches your hair. Bright pink.
Well, I'm not sparkly.
So let's kick off and tell us, Gwenda, how old were you when you first received your diagnosis and how old are you now?
I was only 59 and I worked out it was January 2012. So it will be 14 years in January, which is only 6 weeks away since I was diagnosed. And I was given 5 years if I took medication, 3 without.
So when you were first diagnosed, they said 5 years. What was the 5 years?
5 years with medication. If I took medication, the medication he wanted to give me, they would have given me 5 years. But I also...
5 years to live?
5 years to live. And I also knew, and he said 3 without. But I only knew about Alzheimer's at the time. So I accepted his diagnosis, and if I was going to go, I was going to go quickly. And I went home and I went to bed to literally die. Stopped eating, stopped drinking, wouldn't shower, And then as things progressed, and it was eventually somebody told me about Dementia Australia, community engagement officer, got me through some of the darkest days of my life. And I have to say, last year, 2024, was the best year of my life.
Really?
And so I have had some of the best years of my life since my diagnosis.
So was there a particular moment or something that happened that made you reassess or recalculate what it meant to be living with dementia?
Yeah, Dementia Australia asked me to go on the ABC show. You Can't Ask That. I did it with Kevin Morris, somebody from Wodonga, and Kevin and I sat there, and it was like such light bulb moments from the questions they asked. And it was so good sitting with Kevin, who basically has the opposite of everything I do. My sense of smell is off the scale. Kevin's lost his. And it was just so enlightening. And I thought, there's more to this than I've been thinking about.
So if you can think about what's changed for you, I do want to talk about what keeps you reminded that you're you. But what have you noticed that has changed that you don't love so much?
Oh, I've stopped caring. I don't give a shit. But quite honestly, I just don't care about anything. And then I've only recently realised in the last few months that somebody asked me what brings you joy. And I thought about it and I said a particular grandson. And then somebody else said to me, do you ever laugh out loud? And I realised I don't. The last time I can recollect laughing out loud was about 18 months ago with a particular person, but it's only that person I laugh with. And I don't laugh out loud. And so therefore the emotions, not only are there no emotions of sadness, there's no emotions of real happiness and fun and laughter. I have fun. My life's fun all the time. I live my life to the fullest. But, I realised that other side of the spectrum, while not feeling any empathy, not caring, not feeling real sadness, I'm not feeling real joy either.
I remember the first time I sat down and talked with Jim at the very beginning of this, you were really still quite distressed about losing your driver's license.
Yeah.
This was a big thing for you, not really having the grandkids on your own, being able to go and pick them up. So are there things like that for you which you've lost or don't have the capacity to do that you sort of pine for or feel something about?
The biggest loss of my life was losing my driver's licence, and we don't talk about it for the loss and grief process, but it was definitely the biggest loss. But the second biggest loss for me was I went to get my first tattoo last Easter Saturday.
Wow.
And,
you've got a tattoo.
And I've got 3 now.
Wow.
And I couldn't sign my name. And I went into shock about the fact that I couldn't sign my name. And I rang a friend who's a neuropsychologist and said to her, I can't sign my name. And she said, repetition, repetition, repetition. And it reminded me, we never underestimate the neuroplasticity of the brain.
Got to keep doing it.
We've got to keep doing it. We've got to keep doing it. And she said, learn to play the piano or something. I said, not going to happen. But we laminated my signature, got it off my pension card, laminated the signature, traced and traced and traced. And now I'm pretty well back to what was my signature. I can do it sometimes, but one day I wanted it perfect and it took me 8 goes, which means, but I can still do it.
Have you had anything happen like that? Is there something that you've lost that you could do that you've sort of surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, I was finding that when I read Ty introduced no screen time after 9 o'clock, like because of going to sleep and all the research he'd done. And then, so now we're avid book readers, and I have a pile of books next to the bed that I try and plough my way through. But I'd sort of lost interest because every time I went back to the book, I'd got to go back and back and back to try and find what I'd been reading about. And it was, but the more I've persevered, the more I keep doing and doing and doing it, the more I've sort of got back into it really of late. So I had started to just completely withdraw and think, I can't bother with the reading because it's just tiring. But I'm sort of getting back into it now. So I just know I've got to go and do a recap, and then I'm back in. Hey, Gwenda, I'm just wondering, did anybody in your family have dementia?
Well, I wouldn't know because I'm older than both my parents were when they passed. My dad was 64, my mum was 72. My dad was an Aboriginal man who I've been fortunate enough to get his child welfare records. He was in Tasmania, was born in 1906. He's a Palawa man. And he went off to World War II, came home, and like a lot of soldiers, he ended up with what shell shock it was called, PTSD. He was an Aboriginal man who couldn't own anything. He couldn't own property because even though he was good enough to go to war prior to the 67 referendum when Australia voted yes, Aboriginal people couldn't own anything. So it was own a piece of land. So it was a very different world.
That's unbelievable.
And I think the main thing is that with Aboriginal people, dementia is often mistaken as mental health or grog sick. And we've got to start asking the question, could it be something else? Could it be dementia? We've got to stop putting the blame on people, which is where I go with my modifiable factors. Stop trying to blame me for the fact I've got dementia. Let's look a bit further as to what it might be. And is it dementia? And I feel really strongly about that.
I guess that's a common feature, isn't it, of when there's someone is trying to diagnose something, you can end up feeling very cornered with the questions, right?
Yeah. And I've been very involved in Aboriginal communities and Aboriginal research, and we've now still working on modifying the KICA, the Kimberley Indigenous Cognitive Assessment. And because the diagnosis for different cultures can be very different. And I had the opportunity to meet with some Taiwanese people and seeing the way they do their diagnosis is very different. And I think there's no one size fits all. You see one person living with dementia, you see one person, you see one community that has people living in it with dementia, you see one community. And I think we've got to really broaden our thinking as a multicultural society. We need to broaden our thinking. And it's all very well to say, you know, Aboriginal people have a high percentage of people living with dementia. But what do we know as statistics really? How do we know what Aboriginal people are living with? How do we know? And how can we know? We can only know if we keep our minds open and really get to know who the person is. If you take one thing away, it's about finding who the people are, and particularly if you're a carer, really know who your loved one was, because often we hid it from our children.
Gwenda, I guess everything about you is not what the common perception of someone living with dementia is. And I suppose there'll be people listening to this, either themselves with a diagnosis or a family member that's been diagnosed, that really might have very different expectations of a dementia journey or pathway or whatever you want to call it to what you're describing. What would you say to those people?
It's really hard, but then I've never fitted the normal box, the normal cycle on the washing machine. I've never been normal. But on this adventure, people judge all the way through. It's part of the stigma of society, I think. And I don't know what a normal person living with dementia is like. But sometimes
Well, you're supposed to have gone gaga, staring out the window.
I have,
That's
haven't
right.
I? But I think if I could sort of do one thing, it's say, try and think what it's really like for me. Try and think what it's really like when I can't find something and I'm pulling everything out of the wardrobe in the middle of the night, or I'm getting up and down 7 or 8 times going to the kitchen. One of my sons said to me, if there's one thing when you talk to your dementia counsellor, can you ask them why you get up and down so many times after you've gone to bed? And I go to the kitchen, and one day I got up the next morning and somebody had smeared carrot cake all on the kitchen bench. And my son said, don't you remember getting up? You were doing it last night, wiping the bench with the carrot cake. The bags of groceries mysteriously appear on the kitchen bench, and I haven't put them there. And my vet said to me, see if any of your neighbours have got a camera. And I said, oh, I've got a camera. And I had a look.
And it was
And
you.
yes, it was me who definitely brought them in. But it's in the black hole. I don't know. But if I've learnt one thing, I've learnt the more you try to dig into that black hole, the further it goes. I don't look like I've got dementia, but I'm not going to let it beat me either. But I've just made the momentous decision to move into a residential aged care community. And I was one person who was never going to residential care. And if I could say to anybody, don't exclude it, shop around, find where it's the best place for you, which I did. I've shopped around and I've only moved a fortnight ago. Different lifestyle, different thing altogether, but I've done it on my terms. Don't wait till your family decide for you. I was determined I wasn't going to have my boys tell me where I was going. And you've got to be realistic about it. We're probably all going to end up in residential care, whether we like it or not.
What triggered that for you? What made you get to that point where you said, I'm going to take control and get myself sorted into residential care?
I fell. I didn't have a fall like old people do. I fell and I fractured 3 ribs and tore the flailing. I was in absolute agony at home and I realised my family didn't have capacity to care for me. They may have had the desire, they may have thought they could, but I realised they didn't. And that was the trigger. That was 4 years ago in November, 4 years ago. And I started looking. I started looking at places in a different light. Would I live here? And once I found when, that became the benchmark that I looked for others. They had to be better than that one or equal to. And I looked at from Tasmania to Darwin.
So you were prepared to go all over?
I would have gone anywhere in Australia. And
That takes some courage.
But I had to say, what sort of community do I want? Because I need to train the staff for what I want.
Yeah.
I need them to know who I am. Don't expect me to get out of bed in the morning.
You're not an off-the-shelf customer, really. You're quite unique.
Am I?
I reckon they might have guessed that with the hair, but anyway, Gwenda. So listen, the language that is used when it comes to people living with dementia is pretty important to you, as I understand it. So if someone sees you standing outside on the grass, no shoes on, looking around, now they might describe you as, oh, she's got dementia, she's gone wandering. What would you say to them? How would you describe that?
Well, I guess it all depends if I had clothes on. I've got no shoes on, but it all depends if I've got the clothes on.
Does it
as well.
sometimes happen without clothes?
It sometimes happens. Ask the post lady. She opened the door one day and there I was. And she said, do you want to go and put a dressing gown on? I said, why? And I just took the parcel from her. It was an issue for them that I was waving my boobs around. You know, they're like tennis balls in a sock hanging, but it wasn't an issue for me. And I think the same if I'm standing there, because in my mind, whatever I'm doing with purpose. So they may think I'm wandering. God, I hate the word wandering. We're either exit seeking, as in trying to get out, we're walking, or in our mind, we're actually going somewhere or doing something or preparing for something. And if you saw me standing on the grass with nothing, no shoes on my feet, would you think to ask me, you know, what's happening for you? What are you doing? Because I may be communing with Mother Earth. I have one particular friend I always say to her, get your shoes off and stand barefoot in the dirt. And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing something very real for me. But that's your judgments. And with dementia, everything comes with a judgment. Everybody judges you.
So explain that then for the child, the spouse, the relative that has come to see you, and you're standing in the middle of the median strip with no shoes on, maybe with clothes or not. They might be a bit worried. Is Gwenda safe? How do you want us to interact with that? Because I suppose that for me, as someone who's had a parent that's done some stuff that I'm like, well, that's unusual. What do you want us to do?
I'd like you first of all to think about, is it your fear or is it something your loved one would have done anyway?
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Yeah, well, Dad was
Then
weird,
if you
so,
see me in the middle, then if you see me standing in the median strip and how are you? You know, what are you up to? What are we doing?
Take the time to just
would you like to come somewhere with me?
investigate.
Yes, that's the word. Find out who I am.
And what you're actually doing.
What am I doing? Where am I? Because where am I in my head?
So the offence comes really if somebody takes control and tells you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be here. You really want somebody to invest the time to understand why you think it's okay that you're doing what you're doing. Yeah?
That's right, Jim. You've known me for 5 minutes. Do you think anybody would tell me what I shouldn't be doing? It would certainly
Not even
push me. It would certainly push me to do something different, I can tell you.
I'm just picturing the staff in this residential aged care facility and you training them at the moment, Gwenda.
They're like the one with the pink hair's got no clothes on in the middle of the garden. Sounds like you on a Sunday morning.
And it was actually interesting because one facility I asked straight out, can I walk around with no clothes on? They said, you can do what you like.
Really?
And other residents in that particular facility are very accepting, and it's about who am I as a person? And different things surprise you, like the not being able to sign my name. That snuck up on me. I went to the doctor and said, why can't I sign my name? And he said, your cerebellum. I said, no, you told me that was a falls. Nobody prepares you for this adventure. Nobody says you can expect this, only that you can expect to die. That's about the only thing you know. But nobody prepares you. I'm going to go where nobody else fears to go. Continence. I had in my advanced care directive, if I was doubly incontinent, I had no quality of life. Now, I've been to the urogynecologist. She wanted to do Botox. So I said, no way. The brace just doesn't get there in time from the bladder to the brain, and all of a sudden, then it started coming out my bum. And you're sitting on the chair and you think, I've got to go and do a poo. And before you know it, it's already there and on the lounge room floor. You just don't get that message in time. But you look at me, who would ever think that I'd be doubly incontinent? If I was doubly incontinent, I had no quality of life. But I still do, because there's ways we can manage things. I'm never going to learn to get the message from my bladder to my brain. Those neural pathways have gone. I can't save it, it's gone. So how can I manage it? Do you go on the clock? You find your own ways to manage it.
That's key, really.
And have you found a way to manage it?
I think I manage it fairly well. I wear black frilly continence knickers. I don't have to wear those white, boring granny ones. But it's okay because they're comfortable. I can sit on a plane and it can come and I don't feel wet. No caffeine. You can go 8 hours at night with no caffeine. You can go, you're still up pulling everything out of the wardrobe or wiping the kitchen bench with carrot cake or doing other things, but you don't have to go to the toilet because you've got no caffeine. And that's about managing it.
From my point of view, the value to doing this podcast and having these conversations is I think you're shedding light on this in a way that people have never really understood dementia to be. You know, there is this belief that once you get a dementia diagnosis, that's pretty much it.
That's what I believed. I went home to die, literally went home to die. I went for a whole season, never saw the roses, never planted my sweet peas that year that I'd planted every St Patrick's Day since I was a little girl with my dad. Never planted them that year because I was going to be dead. If I was going to die within 3 years because I wasn't taking medication, I was just going to do it, and I was going to do it quick. And I realised, I saw like a little light bulb turned on and said, well, look, you can either go with this and let it beat you, or you can take control of it. And yes, it has beat me in some ways. It really has beat me in some ways. And even this realisation that really I don't have a lot of joy. I can't laugh out loud. I would love to go and have a really big laugh.
Don't you going to make me come over and tickle you in a minute to get that laugh out?
I'd do anything for that. But seriously, I would love to have that really good laugh.
A real belly laugh.
Yeah, we've got to say, okay, there are some changes. What is it? What's happening for me? Get that benchmark indicator and then go from there and see what you can do. And don't talk modifiable factors to me, because I've never drunk, I've never smoked, I've never had an illegal drug, never had a cup of coffee, 5 kids always doing the strength-based exercise. And I got a diagnosis. And I've thought about it. Why did I? I don't know, but by crikey, if I've got it, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to use it to make life better for somebody else.
And I think you've done that in bagloads. And so you've been amazing for us. Absolutely inspirational. And it's a pleasure to meet you.
Gwenda, thank you.
Thanks, Hamish.
And Redley.
Yes,
fallen asleep
Redley
on the floor.
She's had a big day.
Hold the Moment is a podcast from Dementia Australia, produced by Deadset Studios.